And we are back. This is another talk, because I don't know if I want to call these episodes, another talk for 30s for 30, where we talk about starting over in your 30s, if you're thinking about starting over, if you've started over, and how it's going. So a little bit of back end story is I just up and quit my job after 6 years. For those of you who have been following me for a while, you know that I picked up my life from New York and I moved to Los Angeles back in 2019. And I was working at a gym. I started off as just a trainer at F45 in downtown Los Angeles. And I picked up my whole life, moved across the country, and I had this big hopes and dreams to be this big shot celebrity trainer. I wanted to be in the mix. I wanted to be famous. I wanted all these different things. I didn't really have a sense of purpose other than I'm really good at fitness and I'm really good at being around people and I'm really good at getting people fit. So that was just what my goal was out there. That was what my whole entire thing was. So in this episode, we're going to talk about a corporate burnout or just a burnout in general, because I didn't really work a corporate job. I worked for a franchise, but you catch my drift. So once I picked up my whole entire life, it was just supposed to be a pit stop. Honestly, it was never supposed to be something that it turned into. It was never meant for me to work there for all those years. To be quite honest with you, as time went on, I got comfortable. And because it was such a breath of fresh air, actually being out of the mix, if that makes sense. So at 45, it's just regular people going to the gym and getting a group fitness class. Like, it's not these celebrities. It's not influencers who just want to train with you in exchange for content. It's nothing other than people coming in, taking a group fitness class and leaving. And for me, I developed such an emotional attachment to that gym and to these people because I grew up in that gym. I was 26 years old when I first got out to LA, and then I'm 32 now. So for me, it was just so much more than a job. It really just was life-saving for me. And those people really watched me grow up from this immature girl into a woman who decided to just go get better for herself. And within that, as I was like moving up, like I said, after the first year, after COVID, then when life happened and we got back into the gym, I realized like, wow, I don't want to be an entrepreneur just yet. I'm not ready to go be this celebrity trainer. I'm not ready to go do any of these things. Like, I really want to stay in the gym and have a steady paycheck, right? That's why a lot of people turn to corporate, is that stability, the benefits, the whole nine and everything like that. And it's just really having that stability of knowing I have X amount of dollars coming in at X amount of time every 2 weeks. And this is how I pay my bills. This is how I pay my rent. Now, what America focuses in on is this grind culture. And this is how we get to the corporate burnout, is when we're trying to reach a certain level of our career, we go from the bottom to the top. So as you're trying to achieve going from the bottom to the top, you burn yourself out at some point, right? So for some people, you get out of college, you get your college degree, you go get a job. You stay at that job and you enjoy it. That's great. Like, you stay stagnant there. Then there's other people who get into corporate jobs who just want to climb and escalate that ladder, and they want to go, and they're not going to stop until they get to that high paid position. And I was one of those people. So I started off as a trainer, and then I progressively moved up into the head trainer, where I was essentially just running the studio. I was doing everything. I was doing the schedules for the employees. I was hiring the employees. I was, making sure every single class was running good. I was teaching the most popular classes. Then I was also teaching the most dead classes and getting them from a dead space to a good space. Then I was also doing payroll. I was doing schedules for the clients. Then I was planning the events. I was making sure like all the supplies in the gym were good. The equipment was good. I was doing what I was supposed to do to manage and maintain that the gym was at a high standing rate. And I took a lot of pride in that. And, it put an ego in a good way for me, because I think that it's a good thing to be taking pride in what you do. If you work hard, you want people to say like, hey, you're doing a great job, or like, hey, the gym looks really great. And it's because of what I'm doing. If not, then the gym wouldn't run, right down to having a good staff. You want people to come into the gym feeling good, having good energy. You don't want some Joe Schmo trainer just being like, yeah, good job. So now, with that being said, as the years went on and the more responsibility I had, which is fine, because for me, the end goal was I am going to be a part owner in this gym, or I am going to own this gym. That was realistically only thing that was keeping me in LA, was that gym at that point, at the last 2 years of my 6 years there. So anyway, so now I started teaching 7 classes a day. I was opening the studio, coming in the afternoon, closing the studio up, and it just became super redundant after a while. Like, there's only so much that you can do in that capacity, that you're doing that 5 days a week and then still working on Saturdays, because most people work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and then they're off on the weekends, and then they get their vacation time and whatnot. I didn't have that. So I was really grinding it out. I was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I had this crazy morning routine where I would wake up, have my coffee, then I would read my Bible, then I would journal, then I would read a page or two in my book, then I would head out the door, go teach classes in the morning, then I would come home, train a couple clients, then I would go back to the studio, then I would go train myself, then I would go train a client, then I would go back to the studio. And again, like, opening and closing just became to a point where I was just burnt out. And this is where the topic comes in of the corporate burnout, and where you're just going and going and going. And here in America, we highlight that grind culture. Now, there's nothing wrong with grinding. I just want to put that out there, but it's at the capacity that you're doing it at. So if you're making up all these things that just don't really fit for you, because we've all seen it on the internet. We see the crazy morning routines. We see all the crazy things. Now, I'm a person of routine. I'm a Virgo. So I actually enjoy having the same routine. It's what keeps me going. But a lot of people, they force themselves into these spaces, and there's only so much that they can handle because it's just not meant for them. So again, you get burnt out at your corporate job because now you're just trying to strive, and then you get to this point and now you got to be at this point. Then you're at this point, then you got to get to this point. And the honest truth is there's no end goal besides making more money. You're not going to own that company. You're not going to own that position. There's nothing there. Once you've gotten there, it's like, okay, great. Now what's the next step? Now with entrepreneurship, it's a little bit different. That grind culture is different because it's worth it in the end. It's yours. You can grind it out because you know that in a couple years from now, it's all going to be worth it. So when you're doing that, it's a little bit more sustainable because you have an end goal that's a good end goal for yourself. When you're working for somebody else, you just run yourself into the ground because more responsibility piles up, and then you take it on because you want the responsibility. But in the end, there's no end goal for you. And what got me to the point of where I'm at now in my 30s, where I used to love being at F45 so much that I was the Energizer Bunny. There was a point where people literally thought I was doing rugs in the morning and then going to work because I had such high energy. And that just wasn't the truth. Was not true. So I went from loving it to teaching 7 classes a day to barely even being able to handle 4 classes a day, just because when you're teaching group fitness and when you're working in these kinds of jobs, you have to have a certain type of energy, no matter if you're having a bad day or a great day. You can't walk into a 5:30 a.m. class and just be like, good job, guys. Yeah. Okay. You got to be like, hey guys, what's up? Good morning. Like, da 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 da. Here's the instructions. Here's that. And you have to have a certain type of energy. Nobody's paying for you to be depressed. Nobody cares about that. If I'm paying money to see you, you better be at a high quality, top level. Okay. I don't care about anything that you've got going on. It's here for me. I'm de-stressing currently. So for me, it just became an act that I was putting on. Like I had to literally unlock the door with tears in my eyes just because I was so tired, to then just wiping my tears, putting on the lights and just being like, hey guys, good morning. Hey Lisa, what's going on? Hey Cindy, how are you? Hey, how's it going? Like, how's your kids doing? Like, I literally just was putting on this mask to just be this high energy individual all the time. And there were points of my life, like in those last 6 years, where I was really struggling to barely even just hold my composure some days. Like I remember like I would turn off the lights in my morning shift and just cry and cry and cry. And whether that was because I was going through something personal or whatever the case was, or I was just tired. And it became a point where I was so tired throughout my day that I just remember like I would sit in my living room and I would cry. And I would sit on my couch and like think to myself, like, is this all my life is meant to be? I'm just supposed to work and run myself into the ground and just be unhappy. And for me, it was like a lot of other factors that had gotten me to that burnout point also. It was just my surroundings. And it was never that I wasn't meant for LA and that I'm suggesting that you always need to just pick up and move out of state. But it was just the fact that I was burnt out in a city that I just didn't belong in, right? Because the cost of living was so high. And it's not that I wasn't successful and that I couldn't handle living in Los Angeles. It was just, for what I did, I don't need to be in Los Angeles. So it's kind of like picking the smarter option versus burning myself out to just live this lifestyle and to just keeping up with the Joneses. Like it just, there was no point for that for me, at least. So sticking to that topic of burnout, it just became a point where I was burnt out and trying to keep up with this fitness industry that doesn't exist out there, in the sense of like, it's not super genuine. Yeah, you'll come across like groups of genuine people. Like towards the end where I was already checked out, that's when I met my group of friends who were in the fitness industry, and I love them dearly. But my first 4 years out there, I was coming around a lot of people that were just low vibrational. So when you keep surrounding yourself with low vibrational people, you become that. So a mixture of that and trying to chase this fame and trying to just like move up in the fitness industry, and then just trying to move up in my job, it just became a point where I just literally crashed out. And I just said to myself, like, Lindsay, this can't be it for you. You're intelligent. You're good at what you do. You have a great personality. You know how to make money. You know how to survive. You know how to have people skills. You know how to be equipped in anywhere that you pick up and go. If I did it in New York, if I did it in LA, I can now do it in Florida. But the reality of the situation is, what you have to ask yourself is, when you're at this burnt out stage, is this worth my happiness? Is a paycheck worth my happiness? Because if you're not mentally fit, you're never going to be physically fit. And if you're not emotionally fit, you can't be mentally fit, which then leads into not being physically fit. So all three of them are factors that you really have to ask yourself now at this point. If you're thinking about starting over and you're experiencing this redundancy, and if you're experiencing this, I just punch in and I punch out and I'm just like a dead body there. I have no passion. I have no drive anymore. I've reached the peak of my career where I just can't move up anymore. And is it worth it to me? Can I take my skills and be as successful doing it for myself, or doing it elsewhere, or saying F it and going into a whole different industry? Whatever it is that's going to make you happy, you just can't be in this burnt out phase. You're in your 30s. We are developing gray hair in our 30s for somebody else. And look, let's be honest, when you burn yourself out, so many different things can happen. You can get physically sick. You can get mentally sick. And guess what? If you have to take time off, or if something happens to you, God forbid, your boss is just going to replace you. My story is a different story for a different topic. We're talking about you, and we're talking about corporate burnout, and we're talking about burning out in general. But just remember, when you're working for these types of companies, you're just another number. No matter how many years you've been there, you are another number. And if something happens to you, you're being replaced. Life goes on. The show must go on. But now, let's say you've quit and now you're not experiencing this corporate burnout anymore. Now you can pour all that energy back into yourself. I remember when I first left my job and I moved to Florida, I spent an entire month. Look at me talking like it's been 6 months. It's only been 2 months, people. Let me be realistic. I spent my first month, honestly, doing nothing. Literally nothing. I would sleep in every single day. I was really fixated on fixing my mental health and just not being low vibrational anymore. Like, I really just wanted more for myself. When I first got here, I was just like, still like, do I gotta do anything? Do I gotta go? Like, my brain was fried. I was still on this like autopilot. So what I started to realize was this is just no way to live. I have been waking up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning for years now. And I don't have to do that now that I work for myself. Like, I could really get myself together and still create a solid, good morning routine, because I don't like to just sleep in until 12. All right. I have to have purpose in life. So now what I've focused in on is really focusing in on my mental health, because when you're working for somebody else, you have so much responsibility that you don't have time to even focus on yourself. Like I said, there became a point where I wasn't even working out anymore because I couldn't. I was so tired that all I was doing in my spare time was taking naps and, training other people. So it became a point where financially I became dependent on that grind culture of just being like push through. I was having like 3 cups of coffee a day, which is not great for you, on top of energy drinks and pre-workout and whatever else. And again, you can't run on that for the rest of your life. Like, you really have to ask yourself, like, is there more for me? So now when you reach this point of when you ask yourself that and you say no, and it's time to quit that job, it's just going to be so liberating. Now, I'm not going to lie, like, it's scary starting over and going from that punching in, punching out to now doing it for yourself. You just got to remember the long term, not the short term. And the long term is, wow, I get to reap the benefits in the long run, and I get to make all this money for myself now. I get to take my skills and they're going to be appreciated because you're appreciating yourself. Your boss didn't appreciate you. He just replaced you. He did not appreciate you at all whatsoever. At all whatsoever. Again, you were just another number in that company. You are just a number in that company. So you can't forget that. So again, now when you're experiencing these burnout situations, now it's worth it for yourself in the long run. You don't want to get burnt out anymore. Of course, things are going to stress you out. Like, hey, I'm stressed out. I launched an online training company and I've lost 2 clients in 1 month, but I take my stress and I'm like, okay, instead of freaking out and having a crash out, I can't get fired. All I can do is make less money now. How do I make more money? So now you start to reprioritize different things, because when you were previously in that burnout phase, you were prioritizing your boss, the company. You weren't prioritizing yourself. Yourself didn't matter at all. And that's just kind of where I became at. I just remember, like, again, I remember my last year, my last year and a half, I was really going through a hard time in my life. I was going through a really bad breakup. I can't even believe I said that out loud. I was going through a really bad breakup and I just was not the best version of myself. And with going through that bad breakup, I had to work at my job and I had to show up every single day for these people. And when I was going through the lowest period of my life, I had never experienced an adult breakup before. I went from 160 pounds to 129 pounds, and I was working out like 4 times a day just to keep myself mentally stable. And the only thing that was keeping me alive was my job. But I still had to show up every single day and just wipe the tears from whatever I was going through in my personal life and still walk through those doors. And nobody cared. Nobody cared. I remember when I was at my lowest point, there was like a group of people that I was hanging out with at my job. and they were my friends, and they saw me at my lowest, and instead of like helping me out or, you know, telling me that I was like slipping up at certain things, they all started talking about me. They all ganged up on me. Like, they made those months hell for me. Again, these people didn't care about anything that I was going on. They were just like, oh, she's just not focused in class and she's not this. And it's like, man, are you human? Because I sure was. So anyway, like after that whole little phase, I had now ran myself even more into the ground because I had my personal life going on that was crazy. And then I had my work life that was crazy going on. And then mixing those two together, I wasn't taking care of myself mentally. I wasn't taking care of myself physically. How could I be taking care of myself if I was down to 129 pounds? Like, I was stressed out from work because now I had to like clean up this mess that I made. And it just became a really hard period of life. And then once I got over that breakup and once I started like coming out, I was like, wow, I thought that this job was just going to re-spark me afterwards. And I wasn't. Like I said, I was burnt out, people. That's the whole topic. I was burnt out. So again, bringing it back to you, I'm just trying to give you a relatability here, but bringing it back to you, you're probably at a crossroad right now. You're probably thinking to yourself, hey, I've been at my job for over 5 years now and I'm just not fulfilled anymore. But I love what I do, whether it's finance, photography, art, digital marketing, I don't know, whatever it is. For me, it's fitness. You love that niche, right? But you just don't love what you're doing anymore. You don't love it at the capacity that you once did, or you just don't have it in you to keep going to that boss and to that job that you just can't stand. And you were not meant for that. You are not meant to just pay bills and die, people, okay? There's a saying that I learned that because I travel a lot, the European culture, someone told me this, and it was funny because when I travel, I love to meet different people. And I met a server and he was just so happy serving because as soon as he got done with his serving, he would hop on his Vespa and just go around town, or he would hop on his skateboard because he was a skater. He loved to skate and he would just skate all around Barcelona. So one thing that I learned from that trip was how Americans, they live to work and they don't work to live. So let me break that down. Again, we live to grind, work. I got to work for my boss. I got to stay in past 5 o'clock. Even if I work from home, I'm going to work from a different period because I got to get all these projects done. I got to do all these different things. We're living just to work every single day. We wake up, work. What's the point of that? You become burnt out and miserable. Right back to the topic. And then when he was saying this to me, he was like, I work to live, to put food on my table, to have a roof over my head. And then I get out and I enjoy life. I go skateboarding. I go to the beach. I walk the beach. I go to the skate park, or I take my Vespa and I find this like cool little abandoned spot to watch the sunset. And I just remember when I was doing those things with him on that trip, I instantly thought about my life and I was like, what have I been doing? And again, that fell right into that time period. That was my first solo trip. Then on my second solo trip, when I went to Portugal, I met another person on my trip, and he was working at an inflatable bounce house in the ocean on the beach in Albufeira. And I remember I did it because I was like so petrified of the water. I was like, oh my God, sharks are going to bite me. No sharks were coming in Portugal. Anyway, but, and that was the similar piece of advice that he gave me too. Because I was like, is this what you do all day? Like, you're just a lifeguard and you get to just be at the beach? And he's like, yeah, I get to just be at the beach all day. And then I get to go home and I cook this amazing meal because I love to cook. And I just watch the sunset every day. Like, it's the most beautiful thing. Or I go around the city and I enjoy the little things. I enjoy sitting in silence. I enjoy having an espresso at this coffee shop. I stop and I appreciate all the things in life because life is so beautiful. And that was my turning point of like where it really hit me on the head. And I was like, wow. And I remember coming back from that trip. And I remember like distinctly being like, I just don't know if this is for me anymore. I really think I'm burnt out and I just don't know if I can do it. And that was the same year that I launched my online training company, in the midst of thinking like, okay, if I launch my online training company and still work for my job, it's that work a 9 to 5 and then working 5 to 9 type life, even though those weren't my hours. And that's what I did. That was my mindset there. So that was my mindset after that trip was, okay, if I work both jobs, I can make money, I can pour into my business. And then once I make enough money in my business, I can quit my job. Again, that's what got me to the point of like my crash and burnout. And once I was doing that now, I was running the gym. I was also running my business, and I didn't have enough time, effort, and energy to then put into filming content and to getting my online clients. And I remember talking to my business manager at the time, and she would give me like all these ideas and stuff. And I would tell her like, I just don't have the time. And again, when I would have my phone calls with my dad, because he was a successful business owner, he owns a business with my mom. I already told you guys that. My dad would just be like, oh, how's your business going? I'd be like, I don't have time, and I'm failing at my business, and then I got to go to F45, and then I got to go do this, and I got to go to, and it just became a point where my dad's like, then just quit. If you're unhappy, quit your job and go focus on your business. That is the only thing that is going to make you thrive. And it didn't even register in my brain to actually go forth and do it. And I was just like, I can't do that, because then how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to pay my bills? And then how am I going to pay off my debt? And how am I going to do this? And then it was just like, okay, well, sorry, I just gave you an idea. And if you're not happy with the idea, then I don't know what else to tell you. So it wasn't plausible for me. It was, I'm just going to run myself into the ground until I physically can't do this anymore. So when I was taking that on and then now finding myself struggling to maintain the whatever online clients I had at the time, and then trying to maintain my job, that burnout just got worse and worse, because now I was forcing myself to take my passions and collide them. And then I was just not passionate about it anymore. I know I still love fitness, but again, the burnout comes from the capacity that you're doing it at, and it's not sustainable. Even doing that with working at a company and then working your own business, at some point, like something's got to give where you have to 100% pour into your own business. And what got me there to this point now that I'm at was this book. What is your dream? I started following Simon on TikTok. And in this book, What is Your Dream? Simon goes up to random people on the street in London or whatever city he's in, and he asks somebody, what is your dream? And most people will say, I don't have a dream, or this is my dream, but I can't do it and I can't obtain it because I'm in my job. And he'll literally tell them, I'll hand you £1,000 to quit your job today. Some people will do it, some people won't. So when I started finding this content, that was like another pivotal moment for me. And I was like, okay, let me get my hands on this book. So once I got my hands on that book, it really changed my life and it changed my perspective. I went from not accepting that I was burnt out to then accepting that, girl, you're burnt out. You got to do something. Something's got to give. If this is something you want to do, you got to take that leap of faith and you got to just go do it. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, we're in our 30s. Yes, we still have bills to take on. My best suggestion is, if you're feeling like you're burnt out and you're no longer passionate about something that you love to do, it's time to go. It's time to take your last punch out, and it's time to now take your worth. It's now time to take your intelligence, and it's now time to take your passion and re-pour it back into yourself. Launch a business. Go get a better job. Go do something for yourself. I'm going to push, go go be an entrepreneur. Because again, it's a very small percentage of us that actually know and feel in our hearts that we can do it and that we are going to be successful in doing that. I don't know how else to say it, but I said it in my last video. There just becomes a point in that burnout where you just close your eyes, you ask yourself, am I meant for more? And for me, I remember opening my eyes and being like, yeah, I am meant for more. I'm not meant to work for somebody my whole life. My dad didn't do it. Why am I going to do it? And if you don't have entrepreneurs as parents, I could only imagine how extra scary that could be for you because you don't have a person to fall back on. But guess what? It's 2025 and we have the internet to fall back on. So I say all this to say in this little segment of 30s for 30 is when you're experiencing that burnout, whether you're in corporate, I was in a franchise, whatever. It was still a burnout. We are still calling it a corporate burnout. When you're in that burnout phase, it's time to pour back into yourself. We cannot continue living to work. We got to now work to live. And we have to work in a capacity where we're no longer idolizing this grind culture and grinding ourselves into the ground. And we have to grind out in a different way. Still keep your routines, because when you're an entrepreneur and if you just don't have a routine, you're never going to be successful. So still wake up early in the morning. Still, if you're not into God, journal, do your spiritual thing. For me, I read my Bible. It keeps me grounded. I enjoy listening to the word as soon as I wake up in the morning. I don't touch my phone. I give myself at least 30 minutes to 60 minutes every single day to just go do something for myself and not feel like I have to go grab my phone, talk to so-and-so, answer this email. I like to really keep myself grounded because again, when I was in that burnout phase, it was as soon as I woke up, oh shit, there's a problem at the gym. Oh my God, I gotta go there. I gotta rush around it. And then my whole day is just thrown off. But when you don't have to do that anymore, you are going to keep yourself grounded. And again, I can't stress this enough. If you are not mentally fit, you'll never be physically fit. If you're not emotionally fit, you'll never be mentally fit and you'll never be physically fit. They all intertwine and they are all connected. So if you're experiencing corporate burnout right now, it's time to go. If you're feeling the redundancy, it's time to go. If you've experienced it and you've quit, we've made it to the other side and we're now in the struggle together. But stay motivated, stay positive, and this has been your second 30s for 30.